A couple of years ago, David Montgomery joined a running back committee on the Detroit Lions, captained by Ben Johnson, that made it apparent to me that he was going to be a high upside fantasy football asset in the middle rounds. Last year, I was all over Terry McLaurin in fantasy alongside Jaden Daniels and his college scheme offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, and boy, did that pay off. We are now back in time for the 2025 fantasy football drafts with one of the most important storylines to look out for in the NFL offensive department: coaching changes. In this video, I'll recap every major offseason coaching move on the offensive side of the ball in the NFL and give you all some insight into how it may affect fantasy football. If you want all my NFL content this season, fantasy football, betting, etc., make sure you join the Ball Institute Discord and subscribe to the YouTube if you want more video and podcast content. But without further ado, let's get into the action. We'll start in the NFC West with the San Francisco 49ers, who moved Clay Kubiak to the offensive coordinator role, but this move really shouldn't affect fantasy football much by itself. Kyle Shanahan has been the mind behind the 49ers offense over the last 8 years or so, and he will be that again this year. And Kubiak has been on the staff since 2021 in a variety of roles, including last year as the passing game specialist. The pass run splits are going to be much more contingent on the health of Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and George Kittle, more so than this coaching personnel change. Speaking of Kubiaks, next up, the Seattle Seahawks. They hired Clint Kubiak as their new offensive coordinator. Clint has been coaching in the NFL in various offensive roles since 2016, and his two stints as offensive coordinator were in 2021 for the Vikings with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, and last season with the Saints with Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, and company at quarterback. In both of those seasons, his team ranked top 12 in the NFL in pace, but below average in pass rate over expectation. Now he's going to work with Sam Darnold, but in this context, it's probably even more relevant that he gets to work with Kenneth Walker III. And since getting hired, he's talked a lot about exactly that, saying Walker is going to be a huge part of this offense and zone schemes and catching the ball out of the backfield. What I'm expecting, high volume in the red zone for this backfield, which could include some backup goal line touches for Zach Charbonnet, but all in all, a complete PPR dominant fantasy season for Walker, who you can still get as late as the 4th round in the Rabbit, one of the easiest best ball tournaments to compete in and find edge, a tournament available on the Fast Draft app. And if you use code AHAN as a new user upon sign up, you can get a deposit match so you can draft yourself some Kenneth Walker in Hero RB drafts. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lost Liam Cohen to a head coach job and needed a new offensive coordinator, so they hired Josh Grizzard. Essentially nothing to go off here. This is Grizzard's first season being the official play caller at any level. There also isn't even much code speak here to rely on. Grizzard's media words have been pretty vague so far. Says he wants to be physical and run the ball, but also continues to rave about how versatile the pass catching options on this team are, with Rashad White in the backfield, getting Sean Tucker more involved, and keeping Mike Evans as a priority, utilizing Emeka Egbuka. Tampa Bay is truly one of the wild cards of the offseason, especially with Chris Godwin likely not being ready for week 1. This team is going to be tough to make season projections for. Staying in the NFC South, mentioned the New Orleans Saints earlier and how they lost Clint Kubiak. In 2025, they'll have a new head coach in Kellen Moore and a new offensive coordinator in Doug Nussmeier. Unsurprisingly, the play calling duties are primarily going to be in the hands of reigning Super Bowl champion Kellen Moore, and Nussmeier has kind of been his right-hand man in the NFL so far, working alongside Moore on every team he's worked with in the past. And if there's anything we can learn from their time with the Cowboys, Chargers, and Eagles, it is that Kellen Moore likes his offense to be dictated by his personnel. In Dallas, he had a fairly balanced run-pass split, working with Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott. With the Bolts working alongside Justin Herbert, they ranked number 6 in the league in pass rate. And last year with the Eagles, his team ranked number 32. That is dead last in pass rate. That was, of course, with Saquon Barkley at the helm of the operation. So what does this mean for a Saints offense that probably leads the league in question marks? The main speculation I'm making is that for 2025 fantasy football leagues, Alvin Kamara, even at age 30, is one of the most versatile players on the team. That's the man to target here. This quarterback room lacks mobility, lacks out-of-pocket big-time throw ability. Kellen Moore is likely going to go RPO heavy, get short completions to his playmakers, and prioritize moving the ball with those that have yak ability. You can still get Kamara in the 4th or 5th round in redraft formats, and if you're in a Superflex league, look out for Jake Hader as a dart throw at QB2 if he wins the starting job, because there's plenty of ceiling there if Kellen Moore helps make this offense half decent. Next up, a big one for the Detroit Lions, who lost their offensive coordinator Ben Johnson to a division rival. They've hired John Morton to fill that role. Now, this man has one NFL season under his belt as a play caller, and it was in 2017 for the New York Jets. That season, his quarterbacks were Bryce Petty and Josh McCown, and the team ranked bottom of the barrel in pace and pass rate. but I'm going to go out on a limb and say we can't use this prior as the ultimatum. I'm intrigued by the fact that Morton was on the offensive staff for Ben Johnson in 2022 with Detroit, so he knows the system. There might be less trolling with the trick plays, but the core of the team remains, and I think so will the offensive scheme, so I wouldn't expect much of a shift in overall pass run volume. This Lions offense is a fantasy mine as long as they have health. And speaking of the NFC North, the Chicago Bears hired Ben Johnson as the head coach and Declan Doyle as the offensive coordinator. If you haven't heard the latter name, Doyle was on the offensive staff for the Saints alongside Sean Payton, and then was the Broncos tight end coach with Sean Payton at the helm there. But Ben Johnson is going to be the head honcho of play calling in Chicago, and if there's one thing both new guys have emphasized in their presser so far, it is play action galore, getting Caleb Williams to shoot for a 70% completion percentage benchmark, and that makes sense. In 2024, no quarterback had a higher play action throw rate than Jared Goff, and last year, Caleb ranked among the league's lowest in that department, but when he did get involved in play action, his efficiency saw an uptick. This should in turn open up multiple dimensions to the offense, better efficiency on the deep ball, and potentially more two tight end sets, where the Lions ranked among league leaders in usage last year. Now, the Bears drafted Colston Loveland, who isn't fully healthy entering the season. They paid Cole Kmet to stick around and be part of this retool, but the two guys all of this benefits the most are the don't overthink it guys. DJ Moore ranked among league leaders in true catch rate, route wins, and fantasy points per target against man, even in a broken season last year. When he's motivated and utilized in short yardage instead of just getting those force-fed go routes, this is a guy that's still a great playmaker and still going to command most of the red zone volume. Another mid-round steal for your best ball drafts. And DeAndre Swift might just have his shot to put it all together. The new staff in town are emphasizing how good of a playmaker he can be in this offense, and I believe that. He's going to get involved as a pass catcher and have high week-to-week touchdown upside. If you're drafting best ball teams with zero RB strategies, just snag Swift in the middle rounds, and you've got plenty of upside before your league mates realize that the days of the Bears' offense being a laughingstock might just be behind us. Over in the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys finally moved on from whatever the hell the Mike McCarthy era was. They hired journeyman offensive coach Brian Schottenheimer as their new head coach and versatile offensive coach Clayton Adams as their offensive coordinator. The play calling duties will be in the hands of Schottenheimer, and the last time he did that was 2020 when he was working with Russell Wilson on the Seahawks, but he also has more recent familiarity with the Cowboys when he was their offensive coordinator in 2023 and 24. In his 3 years with the Seahawks, they ranked number 32, number 27, and number 14 in pass play rate, so even though this Cowboys roster lends itself to being more pass heavy, the coach speak in the offseason has been to establish the ground game, and I certainly believe they're going to at least try to be very balanced. Is this necessarily the best idea when your running back room is weak like the Cowboys, but you have Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb? Probably not. That's why, although I'm paying up for the talent of Lamb because he's elite enough to thrive in any environment and command elite upside, it is hard to dabble in other pass catchers in this offense. I like Luke Schoonmaker as a dynasty asset because his athletic profile for a tight end is just fantastic if he ever gets a healthy pass environment, but I'm definitely passing up on the top 50 ADP of George Pickens. It is the year 2025. We have to just admit Pickens isn't a great route runner, isn't a great red zone commandeer, and is still not in a high upside environment for multiple vertical guys to eat. For those reasons, I'm out. Finally, it is only right we finish the NFC segment with the defending champion Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, they lost Kellen Moore, and that was one of the few changes in their personnel this offseason. To replace him, they hired Kevin Patullo. This is another familiar face because Patullo has been on the Eagles staff since 2021, but this year will be his first time as the play caller. Now, I'm not here to pretend I know how much the pass rush splits are going to change after losing Kellen Moore. It would be hard not to assume this offense will still be pretty run-heavy because Saquon and Hurts as a combo as lethal as it gets no matter who's calling plays. But don't sleep on Saquon's load being managed a bit, and that is something Patullo has talked about since getting hired. Will Shipley is probably one of the best handcuffs you can draft in fantasy football this year, and if you want more data to back up why I'm lower on Saquon this year after I was heavy on him last year, let me know in the comments and I'll pump out a short video on how I view this year's Eagles. Heading over to the AFC, a big shift was made by the Las Vegas Raiders, who brought in Pete Carroll as the new head coach and Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator and official play caller. Now, this is the definition of a throwback when it comes to these names, because Kelly has been bouncing around between college programs over the last decade or so, but his last stint in the NFL came, of course, as the head coach of the Eagles, and he was credited for being a huge part of their offense. In those seasons, the Eagles were always above league average in run play rate and among league leaders in pace, which put them atop the counting stat leaderboards for offense consistently. Now, of course, it's been a long time since he's been in the big leagues, and a lot can and has changed, so there's no guarantee that his approach will be similar in 2025, but with a brand new roster, drafting Ashton Jeanty in the first round was both an unsurprising move from the organization and also pretty telling that there should be a lot of running the football. However, I think what all of this gives us is a great window of opportunity to buy all in on Brock Bowers. The new quarterback in town is Geno Smith, and say what you want about his inconsistency, but this is a veteran quarterback who has proved every year that he can be accurate even with choppy offensive line play. And Bowers is one of the best tight end prospects we have seen in recent years. There are no alpha wide receivers on this team. The pace could increase by way of Chip Kelly, but they could also see a lot of negative game scripts, and garbage time would benefit more for passing in this offense. Bowers is my tight end 1 overall in my season rankings, and if you want to see all my 2025 fantasy football season projections for offense, head over to the Ball Institute Discord. Next up, the Houston Texans moved on from Bobby Slowick as their offensive coordinator, and that by itself is a huge dub and immediately makes the Texans contenders because Slowick was one of the most monotone play callers in the league with no spacing as a construct in his offense. CJ Stroud deserved better and is likely getting exactly that with the new hire Nick Caley. This is someone who has primarily been a tight ends coach in the NFL, but now gets a hand at play calling. But the two main offseason takeaways are, number one, the coaching staff wants Stroud to have more autonomy in this offense with audibles, for example, and two, the Texans spent high draft capital on two very good and very different wide receivers, a duo that could honestly be way better than the Tank Dell-Stephon Diggs combo last year. I'm expecting more passing for this Texans offense and a complete breakout and MVP finalist caliber season for CJ Stroud. And of course, don't overthink it, Nico Collins still has top 5 upside. Staying in the NFC South, speaking of top draft pick quarterbacks, it's been a horrible go results-wise recently for Trevor Lawrence, but the book is still open on what he can do if healthy, so the Jacksonville Jaguars have turned to Liam Cohen as the head coach and Grant Udinski as the offensive coordinator. Word on the street is the man who got Baker Mayfield his best career year, Liam Cohen, is going to be the play caller for the Jags. Last year, the Bucs with Cohen as a play caller ranked top 10 in offensive plays per game, number 5 in dropback EPA per play, number 6 in rush EPA per play, and top 10 in run play rate. The 2025 Jags are exciting to say the least. Brian Thomas Jr., stud. Travis Hunter, cut the narrative BS for 2 minutes if you're a Colorado hater, another stud. I'm expecting Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, and Bajal Tootin in the backfield to be a complementary committee of diverse talent with more parallels to last year's Bucs backfield than you might even realize. The two takeaways are simple for me. Number one, I'm all in on stacking Lawrence with both Thomas and Hunter for the upside because this offense has a chance to be well above average while playing alongside a defense that's still not great, which is awesome for week-to-week fantasy stat padding. 2, this running back room is probably going to be more productive if they all work together as a true committee. I think ETN takes the goal line duties, which is why he is the most expensive one in redraft formats, but the one player in this offense that I find myself not loving at cost is Tank Bigsby. The workload is not going to carry his production because he's in a tag team, and Tootin is just Bigsby but better at everything. Overall, this is Lawrence's prove-it year, and I think they're finally giving him a decent situation to succeed, and even though it may not result in a huge number of wins because of that defense, we love that for fantasy production, kind of like how we loved the Bengals offense last year. The next team is one where we'll just keep it short because God knows what we can expect from this organization. The Cleveland Browns hired Tommy Rees as a new offensive coordinator. Head coach Kevin Stefanski is the play caller, though. The shift in how this offense will be run will have everything to do with personnel, who gets most of the snaps at quarterback. I plead the fifth, and that's not what this video is about. Do I expect Cleveland to lead the league in pass rate like they did last year? Probably not, so I'm skewing my projections a little bit more toward the run, especially since they drafted Quinshon Judkins in round 2, a guy who could definitely be a bell cow in this league. But for now, it's best to leave the question marks as question marks and wait for more info as the season approaches. Speaking of teams with questionable quarterback play, the New York Jets are moving on from the ancient version of Aaron Rodgers and are taking a shot on Justin Fields to oversee the operation. They've hired Aaron Glenn as the new head coach and Tanner Engstrand as the new offensive coordinator and official play caller. This is going to be Engstrand's first official shot at calling plays in the NFL, a role he's had experience in at the college and XFL level. So the priors here are tough to judge off of, but I'll say this. The Jets better not live and die off the past, because if you do that with Fields, you're getting fried. Aaron Glenn has thrown out a lot of praise already at the backfield trio of Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis, and Braylon Allen, so I'm expecting a good old flavorful smoothie of mid all across this offense, heavily focused on running the ball and chewing clock and passing the ball inefficiently. There really isn't much intrigue to anybody in this offense for fantasy football, not even in the backfield, since their new quarterback is likely not going to be very check down reliant. Just move on and free yourself from this headache in New Jersey. Lastly, speaking of mobile quarterbacks, the New England Patriots have themselves one that is actually a good thrower of the football with upside in Drake May, through the air and on the ground. The problem is that not only do they not have much of an alpha presence in the pass-catching room, but their new hires aren't ideal if you're looking for fantasy upside. They hired Mike Vrabel as the new head coach and Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator. There's history in New England with those names, and I'm going to just say it, McDaniels has not been it in a very long time. The play calling has always been overly conservative, and this is frankly not the man I want in charge of developing one of the best dual-threat talents in the league. Drake May was simply outstanding out of structure last year, and he may have to pull off more of that magic this year because the weapons aren't going to do everything for him. Travion Henderson is absolutely electric and should dominate the backfield touches in the red zone for New England, and that is legitimately the only player on this roster I'm willing to take a shot at in redraft leagues. There's obvious week-to-week upside with what Drake May can do on the ground and through the air, but the Patriots offense might just be one of those you reserve for weekly DFS games, especially once we learn more about the coaching staff and how they perceive the roles of the new-look receiving room. And that will conclude this review of offensive coaching changes of the 2025 offseason. We covered 14 teams with insights on fantasy football, but if you want immediate access to all my NFL content this season, betting, fantasy football projections, join up the Ball Institute Discord, and if you want more video content for the upcoming season, subscribe to the YouTube.